Talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. The IntelleXual Podcast starts now.
Hey there, everybody. It's me, all alone, flying solo tonight on the IntelleXual Podcast. Hi. I can see by the stream that nobody's joined me yet, but for those of you who are watching this on the replay, welcome. This is January 2nd, and I just thought this is probably as good a time as any to hop on and kind of get the ball rolling on a new year of the IntelleXual. It's kind of a big year. This is us moving into our 10th year of the IntelleXual. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around the idea that I've been working on this podcast now for a decade. And as we approach this 10th year, this 10th season, however you want to look at it, I kind of thought after our first episode of the 10th year, which was with the absolutely delightful Carolina McGay, I thought it would be a good time for me to take a little moment to kind of sit back, reflect a little bit on where this podcast is, where it started, how it's grown, how it's changed over the years, and maybe have a little discussion on how I am trying to envision how this is going to go for the next year. But we'll see how it all goes. For those of you who are joining me now, and I do see the numbers on the stream starting to tick up a little bit, please feel free, if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook and you're watching this there, drop me a comment. If you're in the actual live stream, I believe at the Intellectual Entertainment page on Facebook, or if you're watching it on the YouTube channel, then you can actually just type your comments in and I'll see them here and I can actually pull that up on screen. Also, if you're a buddy of mine and you want to come on and just talk with me tonight, please just send me a text message or a Facebook Messenger and I'll send you the link to come join me. I'd love to have some people come on and chat with me. But we'll see where things go. I don't even know how long tonight's podcast is going to run. This is absolutely an impulsive, completely unplanned dive into just creating some content tonight for everybody to listen to or check in on later. 10 years, man. I mean, I try to think back on where I was when the Intellectual started, and it's kind of interesting. This 10-year period of the podcast seems to be bookended by the only full-time office job employment I've had in my adult life, really. I had a couple of office jobs like right after college. But since about 1998, I was a freelancer and a corporate audiovisual technician and filmmaker from like 97, 98 timeframe all the way until about 2011. And then I took a 2 or 3 year period where I worked in an office. I ran a company called Life Apps Digital Media. I was the COO, helped my buddy Bob Gaiman take the company public. We generated and created a number of iPhone apps and iPad digital magazines in the health and wellness space. And that was a hell of an experience. But it was kind of like a blip on the radar. It was a little bit something different that I did for just a little period of time. Right around the time my mom first started getting sick and getting sick to the point that took her to the end of her life. And it was a few years after my dad had passed away, and I was going through a lot of emotional change and spiritual searching, and I just kind of felt like it was time for me to get off the road for a bit. It was time for me to settle my life down a touch, and that opportunity came up. And absolutely value the time I spent at Life Apps. Bob Gaiman, the president of Life Apps, the gentleman who gave me that opportunity, and had a little phase out on my camera there for a second. Not sure what's going on, but it's interesting because I had that job and I made decent money there, but it was also at a time when the economy was on a downturn, and somehow, even though I did very well at the job and I excelled at it and I actually very much enjoyed it, some part of me couldn't accept the notion that I deserved it, especially at a time where so many of my friends were getting laid off. So many of my friends were struggling in that downturn on the economy. And I missed the kind of wild creative spirit of being a freelancer, of being a road tech. So a number of things kind of came to head. And after about 2.5, 3 years of doing that job, I decided I was going to go back to being a filmmaker. Now, that also coincided in 2013 with the 20th anniversary of my high school graduation. And that summer, when I was kind of struggling with figuring out exactly what I wanted to do, if I wanted to stay with Life Apps, if I wanted to kind of do other things, I did a podcast called The Voices of 93. And The Voices of 93 was my attempt to force myself to attend my 20th high school reunion. As many people know, and I try not to make any bones about it, because I believe that sharing my own mental health journey can be helpful to others. I have quite a bit of social anxiety. I have a difficult time pushing myself to go into large groups, to attend parties, to attend social functions. And there's very few things that I think give some people anxiety quite like their high school reunion, right? I skipped the 10th, kind of regretted it. I told myself that I would do whatever I needed to do to make sure that I attended my 20th high school reunion. So when the 20th came around, I joined the reunion committee, and in the course of that, they were having trouble trying to entice people to come. So I suggested we do a podcast and that I could host it. This was beneficial, I thought, to the reunion, but it was also beneficial to me in that it forced me to kind of approach my reunion as a job. And I can oftentimes break past my social anxieties if there's work involved, because the kind of responsibility side of me steps up and says, you've made this commitment, you're going to make this happen. So I started the Voices of 93 podcast, and I thought, well, I'll interview, the other members of the reunion committee and kind of show people that what you see on Facebook, what you see on Twitter, it's not really the whole picture of who we are, and actually having conversations that last an hour or more can really fill in a lot of gaps that you don't know exist with some of these people. And so I thought it would just be me and the reunion committee, and that would be enough. But as we started that podcast, it actually found some real traction with the people that we went to school with. And before I knew it, I ended up interviewing something like 36 or 39 members of my graduating class through the course of that summer leading up to our reunion. And it was exciting and interesting, and I learned a tremendous amount about myself by talking to these people who have a connection to me, but some of them not like a deep connection. Like we went to the same school. I knew who they were. We walked the same halls. We knew some of the same people, but I wasn't necessarily friends with everybody that came on that podcast with me. And so it really kind of ignited something new in me, this idea that I could interview people. And as I was winding down my time with Life Apps, I decided to launch a new podcast, which I called The IntelleXual. And it started with me and my buddy Steve Schwartz, who's one of my filmmaking partners and one of my best friends. And we just started talking about movies. And The IntelleXual was born out of this idea that we could have intellectually stimulating conversations about art, about creative endeavors, about film, about music, writing, and so The IntelleXual was launched. And in that first year, the only goal of this podcast 10 years ago, the only goal was to have one episode a week. And it didn't matter if the episode was super produced or if the episode was just me talking into thin air. And at the time we didn't have video at all. But it was just about going through the activity of creating something weekly and sticking to that schedule. And I don't know how to say it, but that's actually a lot harder than people realize. Sticking to a once a week release schedule on your podcast is actually very difficult, because you run into weeks where you just don't feel it. You don't feel the energy. You don't feel the the inspiration. It's tough. But I'm happy to say that first year we managed to get through. Every week we put out a new podcast, and at that time we literally were recording them like the week they went out. And it was a really good endeavor for me. And the other side of what it did for me is it forced me, much in the same way that my high school reunion podcast forced me to talk to people that I don't normally talk to. The IntelleXual opened me up and forced me to essentially network with other creatives in San Diego and in Los Angeles who I otherwise wouldn't reach out to. And the IntelleXual had a very deep personal purpose for me in that first year of trying to shift me away from the office job and back into a creative mindset by forcing me to surround myself with creative energies. And it worked. That first year of the podcast, it sparked off a run of years of intense creativity that came out of myself and my production team, my right-hand woman in virtually everything I've done in my adult life, my sister Teresa, my right-hand man and brother-in-law, Brian. Like he and I have been creating stuff together since college in Texas in the mid 90s. We just kind of launched with this podcast and took that creative energy, the juice that was coming from all these conversations with creative people, with professional creative people, and we ran with it. And we had a good 6 or 7 year run where we were just producing tons of short films, commercial projects, websites, graphic design work. I mean, IntelleXual, I called it, a creative collective, and whatever we saw that was interesting, we jumped on the chance, and we did some incredible projects that I think were incredibly rewarding, creatively, and pushed us into new areas and to do new things that we'd never done before. And the podcast was kind of the start and the jumping point for all of these big things for us. Hi Clark, I see your message just came in. Let me know if you need content. We could touch upon Mystery Highway if we like. No, Clark, I would love to have you come on. If you're available tonight, I'll even have you jump on tonight. I'll send you a private message here on the side. But yeah, so the podcast it really pushed me to do stuff that I really hadn't thought about doing before, and really pushed me along into this kind of whole new creative realm that introduced me to new creatives who I otherwise wouldn't have worked with, got me to work with them. It pushed me into the San Diego film community. I ended up working a lot with the San Diego Film Consortium with Jody Silly, and became involved in the San Diego Film Awards, won a number of San Diego Film Awards, which was a huge honor for work that came from, again, the podcast. The most winningest award-laden film that I've ever made was a film called Things Happen, and we crowdfunded it. The power of this podcast allowed us to raise enough money to make that movie. One of the few movies that I've made that didn't come out of my own pocket. We actually had investors who jumped in and did that with us, which was incredible. And I collaborated with incredible artists like Michael Brueggemeyer and Jordan Jacobo, and the names go on. Mark Atkinson. Mark Atkinson joined the podcast for a long period of time as a co-host. We had known each other prior to my run at Life Apps. He was a secondary, third level character in What's the Vig, the feature film that my family produced with our good friend Al Stoffel in 2005. And Mark reconnected with me through the podcast. He was a guest, and then he became a co-host, and it spurned a number of years of just creative endeavors that we did together. And I'm so pleased to see he's still out there acting and doing his thing and really finding his comedic voice. I know he's had a lot of success in the last couple of years with the Quentin's Carol and with his Pulp Fiction parody. So it's just great to see how various periods of my life kind of came together because of this podcast and kind of propelled us forward to do really incredible things. And in the course of the podcast, it's a show that started with this idea that like, we're just going to do one a week and see what happens. And over the course of 6 or 7 years, we ended up interviewing the likes of the Highlander from the Highlander TV series. We interviewed film composers who've worked on Marvel films. We've done red carpets, during the Oscars, and had the likes of Bruce Boxleitner and James Cromwell, come on our program and talk to us. We've had the voice of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger come on the show, and it's incredible because I still just view myself as some, just regular kid who grew up kind of all over the country and didn't have connections. But somehow I managed to get to talk to these incredible people who have been inspirations to me for years and years. We had Ernie Hudson on the show. I had a freaking Ghostbuster on the show. And I can't even begin to tell you what a incredible honor it was to have these people want to come talk to me. And I got to thank a very, very important person in the run of this podcast, a woman for whom so many things never would have happened on the show. And that's Carla Van Wagoner. Carla, I can't thank you enough for the opportunities that you opened up for myself and for the rest of the members of the IntelleXual team over the years with your incredible PR connections. You were the beating heart of this show for years, and it means the world to me that you jumped in and helped out for all that time. It was absolutely incredible, and the door's always open, girl. You want to come back and help me produce this podcast again, I'm totally down. The last couple of years, really since 2016, Whitney Wegman-Wood has been my primary podcast co-host, and that has been an incredibly rewarding partnership and friendship that has grown and expanded over time. Whitney is one of the persons on the planet that I just respect so much. She is such an incredibly hardworking actress, and she's jumping feet first into producing and creating her own films and stuff now, and doing it in a real big way. And I'm a huge fan of hers and a huge supporter of what she's doing. And she's not done with the podcast. We actually talked a little bit today. We'll be recording another episode with her shortly. And we absolutely need to talk to Whitney because she produced a independent short film that she shot in Kansas with our friend Sue Vickery. And she had Cooper Andrews from The Walking Dead co-starring with her. She's just done an incredible amount of work to try and create a vehicle for her art and for her talents to shine. And I am so proud of all the work that she's done. And I know it was a huge learning process for her. It was a big learning curve to go from being an actress to being a producer, writer of her own material. And that's a big jump. It's a big jump, and I'm really proud of her. And I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product of The Last Butterflies whenever that film gets finished. I know it's in post-production now. But the last couple of years, the podcast has kind of suffered, as many things have suffered because of the pandemic, right? I was unemployed for 18 months. And prior to pandemic, I'd already started looking for an office job again. The grueling nature of working on the road as I'm getting up in years. I mean, obviously I've been doing the show for 10 years, right? So I'm not as young as I was when the show started. I'm not as, life happens. I mean, a lot of things have happened in the time this podcast is run. My mother has passed away. My sister has gotten divorced. My oldest nephew has graduated high school. Uh, life just keeps rolling by. And so I was starting to look for a job that would kind of settle me down a little bit again. I didn't want to necessarily shut down my creative life. But working as a corporate audiovisual technician, spending 85% of my year on the road, it just became untenable. I fell off a dock in 2019 in Florida and broke my elbow. And that really kind of started me on this journey of I can't keep doing this. It's quite literally going to kill me. I was very fortunate. I know people have fallen off of loading docks and not walked away from it. I fell off a loading dock and still managed to walk away from it with just a cracked radial in my right elbow. So I was very fortunate, and I knew how fortunate I was that I didn't suffer more from that. So I had started the process of trying to find new work and kind of shift my career to maybe more of a marketing focus. I really wanted to find a 9-to-5 job, get myself on some rock solid health insurance, all the things, right? All the reasons people go to full-time employment. And the beginning of January 2020, I was on a show in Atlanta, and my knee got crushed between a couple of road cases in the back of a truck trying to load the truck up, and I tore the cartilage in my knee. And so I started 2020 off actually on disability, and then as I was kind of finishing up disability, the opportunity to act in the feature film Kung Fu Ghost came along, and I spent 3 weeks working on that film with Jennifer Lynch and a whole host of incredible stunt people and technicians. And it was a very rewarding experience getting to be a major character and actually act and be in front of the camera for such a large portion of a long project. I hadn't done that. I'd done little tiny bit pieces and some small shorts and stuff over the years, but I've never taken on kind of a central role like that really since college. I did it in a couple of the short films we did then. I had expanded roles in some of the short films in the past, but I'd never been like a lead character or a co-starring primary character of, let alone a short film or a feature film. So the opportunity to act in Kung Fu Ghost was something I couldn't pass up, and it was a lot of fun. But literally 2 days after Kung Fu Ghost ended, pandemic went into full effect and California locked down. And so I went from working 85% of the year on the road to being on disability for a few weeks to 3 weeks of working in a bubble on a film to then 18 months of sitting on my ass at my house. And in the entirety of my adult life, I had never stayed put in one place for so long. Let alone the fact that because of my health issues and things that are going on with me, my doctor told me not to leave the house at first, because nobody knew. Like, there was such a big question mark with a novel virus, right? So the first 3 months of pandemic, I never left my home. I didn't even go out to check the mail. Like, I left that stuff to Brian, who's a bit more healthy than me. He would go out and we'd spray everything down when it came in. I lived a very tight, closed life for a little period of time there. But for the podcast was my lifeline to everybody. And so we did a lot of content right away. And we did Intellectual University, and we kind of reviewed all these short films that we'd created, and we gave these opportunities for people to share their experiences of making films and hopefully try and educate people in the process. And it was wicked. Like the whole first like 6 months or so of pandemic, we were very, very active online. But then it became really clear that things were going to run a long course. And I said it real early on that I thought it would be a 2 to 3 year process before we got back to anything resembling, normal. And I know a lot of people gave me a lot of grief at the time, but I just intellectually, I knew that that was the process, that it was going to take a long time to get back to normal. And I kind of retreated. I'll be honest with you, I retreated, and the podcast kind of took a back burner. We did a number of things for a period of time. Steve Schwartz is saying he lost sound. Try reloading. Let me answer him. Try reloading. We'll see if that works. And anyway, we kind of went on a hiatus. Now, we had a little period of time there where we jumped on that Clubhouse bandwagon, and we were doing the Clubhouse thing. I don't know if anybody remembers Clubhouse, but Clubhouse was kind of a free-for-all chat platform. We did that for a while. We found actors and artists on that platform who wanted to come onto the podcast, and that kind of sustained us through year 8. But year 9 of the podcast really just kind of fell flat. I think we put out 5 episodes last year. And mostly that's on me. And I'll absolutely fess up to that. I lost the creative juice, partly because I found finally a full-time job. And I've been working at a health clinic on the native reservations here in San Diego as their multimedia coordinator or marketing guru. And I'm doing social media for them. I'm doing video production, graphic design, and it's been an incredibly rewarding job. It's been a fantastic job for me to have. I've got a salary. I've got benefits. I have sick leave. I have PTO. It's an incredible place to work. The work that I do has purpose. It matters in some way. And it really kind of fills my heart to go into work every day. And for the first time, I have an office job that I feel like I actually deserve to have and can excel at. And that's been incredible. And in the first year of working there, I didn't want to distract myself too heavily from the work that I was doing. So I've kind of stepped back and focused on the job, but I'm really kind of more comfortable now. Thank you, Jordan. Nice to see you're listening in, Jordan. Good to see you. I've taken a step back. I've focused on the job, but I'm really feeling secure in what I'm doing there now. And I feel like it's time for me to get back on the podcast. Now, what does the podcast mean? And Jordan or Steve, if either one of you guys wants to jump in and join me on this live stream, invite, just let me know. The podcast is going to be, by its nature, a little bit different. And it's going to have to be a little bit different because my efforts in the creative world are going to have to be a bit more reduced than they were at one point in time, because I do have a full-time job. But I need the creative outlet. I need to flex that creative muscle in a way that's not just for work. It's also got to be about telling stories and pushing myself to do new things. And so the podcast has to return as yet another way of making sure that I stay honest to myself and not let that part of me kind of die away. the challenge for me going into this new year, and part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation and put this out there is, I'm an open book. I don't really, I try not to hide away from talking about the difficult things. And in the last 4 or 5 months, I've been dealt a number of medical diagnoses that are going to be a huge challenge. And I think part of the reason I really wanted to sit down and do this podcast today was to kind of run through the 10 years of the podcast, which again is bookended by these full-time office jobs, right? Like 10 years apart. I left a full-time office job and now I'm back into a full-time office job, but I'm trying to find a better work-life balance. That said, I mentioned that my mom passed away in 2016, right at the height of everything that was going on with us creatively. In fact, she saw me win the San Diego Film Award for Best Director and then passed away like 6 weeks later. So it was a real up and down period for me. But my mom passed away because of liver cirrhosis, and that's scarring of the liver. And when you have too much fatty liver going on over time, your liver creates scar tissue, and the scar tissue doesn't process toxins out of your blood as effectively as healthy liver tissue does. So over time, too much fatty liver creates too much scar tissue, and you get progressively worse. And the effect of that is your body is unable to filter out the toxins in the blood as effectively, which makes you susceptible to more and more illnesses. And my mom kept getting pneumonia. So in the end, she got pneumonia and died from pneumonia, but she got the pneumonia as hard and as bad as she did because of the liver cirrhosis. So liver cirrhosis effectively killed my mother. The day before Thanksgiving, I had a fibrosis scan of my liver, and I have to say it out loud, but I have liver cirrhosis, and we've caught it significantly sooner than we did with my mom, partly because I took the lessons of what went on with my mother to make sure that I pushed and advocated for the testing and the kind of thorough deep dive into my condition as I could. And so I know now that I have liver cirrhosis. The only solution to it is to lose weight. I gotta lose a fuck ton of weight. At a minimum, I need to lose like 100 pounds and keep it off for good. So I'm about to embark on a massive fundamental life change in the way I eat, in the way I exercise. And that brings me to the second thing that I got diagnosed with, which is a whole host of food allergies. So not only do I have to deal with the fact that I have to lose weight, but I also now have to figure out what I can eat. Because according to the food allergy tests, I'm allergic to like 90% of the foods that I like to eat. And in 2016, when my mom passed away, I went vegan for a couple of years and shifted to vegetarianism while I was on the road because veganism was so hard as a road tech. But most of the foods that replaced the meats, the various beans, soybeans, legumes, potatoes, like just so many of the things, carrots, I'm allergic to all these things. And I'm like really allergic to egg whites. And on top of the allergies, I also have celiac disease. So I'm also gluten intolerant. So I have a whole host of stuff that I'm coping with right now. And, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be shifting my diet. I'm going to be making a number of adjustments to my life. And I think part of what the IntelleXual is going to be doing going forward is it's going to be a way for me to kind of stay accountable to myself, but also to the people who care enough to tune in about me and about the things that we do here, to share the journey that I'm on and talk about the things that I'm learning as I'm learning them. And hopefully in that way, I can share the difficult times and the triumphs both with anybody who's interested in watching or listening. And maybe in some way, the efforts that I'm going to have to go through for myself can help others to avoid it for themselves or to face it for themselves if they need to. I know my mother knew she was sick for a long time, but she was of that generation where she didn't want to talk about it. And she really didn't want to fight a doctor over what she felt was better for her. Get that extra test. Let's make this happen. Fight the insurance company. Make sure that I get the things that I know I need because I know how I feel better than anybody does. Right. And in fact, my own diagnosis of the liver cirrhosis only came about because I refused to accept that an ultrasound said I have extreme fatty liver, and kind of the general response to that was, well, lots of people have fatty livers, lose some weight. Okay, that's not a huge warning, right? Like that's just a casual warning. And I said, no, I need to see a gastroenterologist. I want to get a clearer picture of exactly what's going on here, because I may have liver cirrhosis. I might have liver cirrhosis. I knew that it was a possibility, however remote because of my age, but my mother died at 61. She got diagnosed 4 years before that, and we started seeing the symptoms without knowing what those symptoms really were at my age, at around 48. That's when she started to really start to take a turn. And my father had open heart surgery for a mitral valve repair at 48. I turned 48 in May. So I've been telling people for a long time that I don't know that I'm going to make it to 60. And a lot of people don't like to hear me say that. They get on my case about it. Well, that's such a negative way to talk. It's not a negative way to talk. It's me reinforcing to myself that if I don't do stuff to make sure that I have the best odds of getting past 60, I probably won't get past 60. But because I keep telling myself that that's a danger, that that's something I really need to look out for, I have been pushing and advocating to make sure that I know a clear picture of my physical state. And for the first time in my life, I am terrified, but I'm also empowered. And I am going to fight this tooth and nail. I am not going to let what happened to my mother just happen to me without a fight. And I'm going to fight, and I'm going to record it. I'm going to document it. Part of the IntelleXual going forward is my life journey, because the show's always been about my life journey. The show started because I needed a platform to force me to talk to people in a social setting, to force me to surround myself with creatives, to force me to step outside of my comfort zone, get into an uncomfortable place, because when we're uncomfortable, we're doing things that are moving us forward. And that's what I want to do. And that's what the show is going to do. It's going to continue to be a reflection of the life that I'm living. And in some way, I hope that it's an inspiration. In some way, I hope that it is a vehicle for education. And I hope that everybody gets something out of it. And if it only appeals to one person to see one of these episodes where I'm talking about this stuff, so be it. If that one person is reached and gets something out of it, then bearing my life for all is totally fine. We're not going to stop having creative discussions. That's still going to be a fundamental part of the show. And I do want to do a short film going into this next year, or going into this year now. So I'm definitely going to step up and take more creative control of my creative life, but I'm also going to take more control of my physical life. I've talked with Whitney. We're setting up a plan for doing like weekend hikes. I've spoken with my friend Cheryl, and we're going to keep each other accountable. She's also going on a physical journey for herself this year, and we're going to keep tabs on one another. And I think that's really important. Yes, Steve, I will force you to like remakes. That has been from day one part of the intellectual for sure. And I talked about that to a friend yesterday. So anyway, I'm going through a lot. I guess that's what I'm coming down to. Is I'm going through a lot, but I hope that my friends who've joined me tonight, and I hope more who catch this on the replay, I hope that you'll join me in it. I hope that all of you can help me stay accountable. Because I want to get back to this face, happy guy. You know, I've had a difficult run. COVID was not as hard for me as it was for others. But it's been an emotional roller coaster. And I know it's been a roller coaster for a lot of people. That makes me super happy, Stephen. I know it's been a roller coaster for a lot of people, and all I can say is, we have to take care of one another. And my friends, my creative partners, inspire me to try and be better creatively, but they also inspire me to want to keep living my life, which is a huge thing. And I can't express enough how important all of you are in my life. We may only talk to each other once in a while, like Jordan and Ryan Castleman, and Carla and Steve. I haven't seen you guys as much the last 4 or 5 years as I would like. I'm hoping that we can change that going forward as well. And yeah, we'll look at a healthier 2023, and we'll see where I'm at. So I'm going to say this right now. My current weight is down from when I got a lot of these diagnoses. So keep this in mind when I say this number, because a lot of people don't peg my weight at my weight. A lot of people think I'm somewhere around maybe 240. But I'm currently tipping the scales at 309 pounds. And my regular doctor wants me to lose like 100 pounds. That would get me down to like 209, 210. He kind of goes, well, if you can get to 220, like 225, which was what my weight was my senior year of high school, that'd be really great. The gastroenterologist wants me to get down to like 190. I have not weighed 190 since I was in junior high. I have very thick bones. I'm a very dense individual. Yes, you can, Jordan, I know what you're doing in your head with that one. But I'm densely packed, and losing that much weight, I will be like a completely different person. Now this photo of me here with Teresa, I was like 285 in that photo. So we're just going to have to, we're going to have to see where I end up. When I went vegan, I got down to 245. And I thought I looked pretty good, but my sister Teresa thought I looked sick. And I'm being told I got to go even well past that now. So we will see. We will see what happens. Yes, Carla, I will do that. Now my recipes are going to be. It's going to be interesting because of the food allergies. I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to play with food wise. So we'll see how it goes. And yeah, maybe I'll set up a page on the IntelleXual's website where I can kind of also share the recipes. Like when I come across good meals and stuff, I can do that. Maybe I'll even do more of that on the Instagram as well, and see where that goes as well. Yeah, silver lining. I'll be thin and hot. Maybe then I'll not be lonely and single anymore too. Oh, Well, my light just ran out of juice, so maybe that's a cue that it's time to shut down. You guys, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the support. Let me turn this up a little bit here so you can see me better. I know that that's not exactly the podcast episode you probably expected to hear. But I do want to thank you guys for joining me tonight and chiming in. Ryan, thank you. Yeah, documenting does make the journey fun. I documented a ton of stuff when I was on the road. Why can't I document this, right? Jordan's been part of that documentation on the road in the past. I did Noom a little bit, Steve, but I have a nutritionist at work who I'm going to work with and try and come up with a custom diet plan for myself. Because insurance is going to pay for that custom consultation, so I might as well take advantage of it. Yeah, they do, Carla. People do develop food allergies as they get older. Thanks, Jordan. I look sexier already. I did shave the goatee off today. I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna not let the beard grow in. Because the beard is a way of hiding that, that kind of under the chin bulge, so I'm gonna stop hiding that for a while too, so we can really get a good view of what's going on. I took a day one photo today, so I'm gonna be doing that every morning, every day. So over some time I can do a string together of watching how my face changes. So, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to make this happen. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I try to live by those words, right? Being honest, being vulnerable, being willing to share the journey that I'm on. I think that's the only way we can help each other out and to better each other's position in life is if we share what we're going through. So with that, folks, I'm going to wrap up this podcast at the hour mark. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you haven't checked out my interview with Caroline, please check it out. It's on our podcast. It's on our YouTube channel. And I think we might start streaming live to Instagram. I think I got a message from them that we're eligible to do that now. So I'll be looking into that as well. But yeah, onwards and forwards for 2023. All you guys, thank you again so much. I love you guys so much for everything that you've meant to me creatively, for what you mean to me with your friendship. And here's to a healthier new year for all of us to come, right? All right, guys. Until next time, I'm David Dawson. This is the IntelleXual Podcast, and we'll talk again soon.
Hello there, citizens. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the floaty that will not flush no matter how many times you try in the toilet bowl of crime. I am Darkwing Duck, telling you please, talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. Whatever the heck that means. After all, you are watching IntelleXual Podcast with your ears.